a lot of people just they want to engage in some kind of escapism with the content they engage with. They just want to turn their brain off, laugh at anime girls on the internet kind of thing. Jiggle, 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 jiggle. You've heard of Twitch, YouTube, Kick, but have you heard of Nebula? I've heard of it on occasion from like some bigger YouTubers, a Legal Eagle, Lindsay Ellis, Vsauce, that kind of thing. And I've never really looked into it too much. I believe it's one of those you gotta sign up to pay to use the website. The cost of that is you don't get ads. So I think the only ads were creators and stuff. Anyways, let's check out the origins of this Nebula app or platform.
I remember exactly where I was. Sydney International Airport, waiting to board a 10-hour flight to Tokyo, followed by a 12-hour flight to Boston, then a 1-hour one to DC, to arrive home the day before Thanksgiving, 2018. My agent Dave said he had an idea he wanted to run past me, so we popped on a call. He had just talked to Vimeo, the video streaming platform. They were trying to persuade him to persuade one of his other clients to build a paywalled streaming site for their videos using their tech. This, and infinite minor variations of this, was something we'd get pitched constantly as creators, but everyone recognized that it couldn't really work. In fact, it had a long history of not working. Perhaps the most flashy failure was Vessel. It launched in early 2015 with the big-name creators of the time. Good Mythical Morning, Epic Mealtime, Shane Dawson, Linus Tech Tips. It was basically a YouTube replacement.
I know all those. One of those I really don't like, but the other ones I like.
Same content, same creators, same features, with the addition that users could pay $2.99 a month to watch videos 72 hours early.
Oh god, there's machinima there? Holy shit.
Combine that with their supposedly unique advertising ecosystem, and the pitch to creators was that they could earn dramatically more per view. This is always the core proposition with these alternate streaming services. More revenue per view, but they almost always have the same problem. The number of views is orders of magnitude lower. Platforms have to extract value from the audience somehow, whether through a paywall or through more intrusive advertising. So why would a viewer watch on your platform when they could watch the exact same content on YouTube for free and with less intrusive advertising? So creators sign on to platforms like Vessel, get menial views compared to YouTube, and before these platforms can grow enough to get to a point where it's worth it for creators beyond an initial test group, they run out of money and shut down. But we had some ideas on how we could fix that. We thought there was a chance that we had identified a magic formula that we were in a uniquely good position to undertake that could make this simple concept work where all others had failed. 4 years later, well, not to brag, but we were right. Nebula has grown massively. Over 650,000 paying users, 100 staff members, a conservative overall valuation of over $150 million, and it did all of that with absolutely $0 of venture capital funding. So what did we do different? Why were we able to make this simple concept work when all others had failed? Clearly, this video is going to be different. I'm not going to be talking about logistics or geopolitics or infrastructure or another business. I'm talking about my business. So that's why, for the first time, I'm here. This was a tricky video to write. I'm trying to use my unique combination of positions as an owner of a now sizable business and as a creator to tell an intimate inside story of how you can grow an idea into an enterprise. There are a lot of things that
I do have ideas I would like to turn into enterprises, but I mean, kind of need the startup capital. But I mean, hey, I hope this is instructive.
Can't be said for legal or practical reasons, and there are countless different stakeholders involved. So what follows is what I believe is the fullest story anyone can tell about the inside operations of a business of this size and nature, but there are, unfortunately, some things I just can't talk about. It's a long story, but it begins in a very small way. On July 27th, 2016, I got this DM from Philip Detmer of Kurskazakt. Hey man, let's get right to it. So me and another big YouTuber might be starting something, but I can't really talk about it yet. We went back and forth for a month trying to schedule a call, then finally we talked. Basically, Philip was going to introduce me to the freelance sponsorship agent he and CGP Grey had been working with for years, and later that might turn into something bigger. That freelance sponsorship agent was Dave Wiskus. That's a name you'll want to remember. It's pretty relevant throughout. We talked, he promised better rates through a data-driven approach with an upfront commission. I somehow believed him, but eventually it turned out he was actually right. Some important context. The industry that had arisen around YouTube creators in 2016 was chock full of liars, cheats, and thieves. It was only over the prior couple years that people could start to make a living off of YouTube, and seemingly the first people that thought to insert themselves as middlemen were all glorified grifters. Getting sponsored is crucial to going full-time on YouTube. AdSense alone.
What a shocker. There's a boom in a new way to generate money, and there's people trying to exploit other people to make that money. Who'd have thunk it? Totally doesn't happen in any other industries.
Rarely cuts it. But at the time, the only deals I could land for my fledgling channel were ones that automatically locked me into 6 months of exclusivity with the agency I booked through without any guarantee they would actually fill video inventory and with undisclosed commissions. Undisclosed commissions in this context means they just told you exactly what you'd get paid, which sounds great in theory, but in practice what it means is that they're selling the slot to the sponsor for one price, then paying you a completely different, lower price, and never telling you what the difference was. They'll just decide what they think you'll accept, but you have little leverage to say no because, once again, you're locked into exclusivity. You're only legally allowed to work with them.
What the fuck? That is so predatory. I don't know if it's the VO's name of Kurzgesagt or like one of the owners. I honestly don't know there.
Oh, and also contractually, they represented the sponsor, not the creator, so their incentives were to push the price as low as it could go. If you didn't like it and wanted to jump ship, you had to go without sponsorship for 6 months, which would kill your finances. I've seen hard evidence that this particular agency was taking a 50% undisclosed commission on certain creator sponsorships, so it's no wonder why Dave was able to immediately beat their rates and get sponsors to come back. They might have actually been paying less, but I, the creator, was getting more of it. By chance, Grey and Philip had also introduced Dave to Brian from Real Engineering. We had collaborated on a set of videos that turned out to be big viral hits that launched both of our channels into relevancy, so he was one of my first creator friends. The next one was Joseph from Real Life Lore. I had never met him in person, but we had talked plenty, so I convinced him to fly out to the inaugural VidCon Europe in Amsterdam in April 2017. Part of the reason was because I had been nagging Dave for months to work with Joseph, whose channel was exploding, and Dave would be there too. The perfect opportunity for them to meet. Joseph ended up having a nightmare weekend of travel delays, some snowstorm or something, so he didn't end up getting there until the afternoon of the last day, but I introduced everyone and we headed to a bar. We stayed there for hours. Everyone headed off, and it capped off an exhilarating weekend. The first time any of us had seen a physical manifestation of the industry we had inserted ourselves into. After working in isolation, it was eye-opening to see and talk to so many others doing the same thing as us, and according to Dave, in retrospect, this was the moment when he fully realized that this informal system of freelance sponsorship booking could grow into something more.
That's pretty interesting. Like, there is definitely a culture, so to speak, of isolation within content creation. There are so many of us, like hundreds of thousands of creators, but a lot of people feel so alone in their struggle of creation. It's such an interesting problem that I don't know how it can even be addressed. I don't think it will be with this video, but Nebula does seem nerdy in some respects, yes. But I mean, it is also offering it's offering a new kind of platform. So, I don't know. It's grown, it's sustaining itself, so it's worth looking into at least a little bit.
It'd be called Standard, a purposely forgettable name for a company designed to exist.
It was based around STEM YouTubers, but they also have some bread tubers on there now. Yeah, like, well, Kurzgesagt is more of a STEM YouTuber, but they have bread tubers like Legal.
Exist in the background.
Isn't some more news also on there? I don't know. I hope so. They're really good. Check out some more news if you want,
Making life easier for the creators on center stage. And it worked. Creators were simply just having a better experience working with Standard. The rates were strong, the experience was personal, the ethos ethical. In a landscape filled with grifters and cheats, the concept of a sponsorship agency simply doing its job fairly was enough to drive natural word-of-mouth growth. We added dozens of creators to the roster and started to be viewed as the go-to agency for educational YouTube. We hired staff, got an office, started throwing VidCon parties. It was all happening. Unbelievably, this part, the part that at the time felt like hard-earned yet incredible success, needs to get glossed over to get to the good part. November 27th, 2018. After a couple of days of back and forth with myself and a few other creators, that's when Dave emailed his full roster of creators the white paper, the initial concept laying out our vision for Nebula. This is that exact email. In some ways it was close. How would this work? Standard creators post ad and sponsor-free versions of their videos, and occasionally the service premieres exclusive content. Let's say we charge users $5 per month for this service. All of this is still true to this day, even the price. In other ways, we were way off. How do we attract viewers? First, we can simply buy AdSense ads on Standard channels. Sponsoring our own creators feels wrong, at least for now. We can revisit it later if we think we can do it without looking dumb. This is about as wrong as it could be. We have never figured out how to make AdSense marketing for Nebula profitable, while sponsoring YouTube creators has been the driving growth force. We'll get to how we made that work. But the real key that we understood from day one was that opportunity cost to Standard, but especially to creators, had to be as small as it could possibly be. Equivalents before us always raised a huge amount of venture capital funding, made a big splash at launch, then ran out of money before profitability, leaving creators embarrassed when they folded. We knew that creators were wary of aligning themselves to something so risky, so we needed to make a small splash. We needed to design Nebula to fail gracefully. We needed to make it so that if it did fail, it would have the smallest possible impact on reputation and finances. Essentially, we followed the most dramatic form of the minimum viable product model of innovation. We needed to get a super scrappy version of the product out into the public so that rather than us having to guess, they, the customers, would tell us what they wanted through how.
Okay, yeah, that's what they should be doing with, like, starting up a new platform. It's, you don't try and polish it to make it look absolutely perfect for launch. You put out a scuffed version that people can actually start using and start feeling it out, and then from there it can actually start growing. And if you invest like a fraction of what you actually want to into it, and then to get it started and running, then it's not that big a deal if it fucks up.
How they acted. You watch consumer behavior in order to fulfill their wants. Luckily, a lot of the bones were already in place. Dave's prior life was in the iOS app development world, so he had a lot of experience in software. We actually had a few engineers on staff to work on the backend tool we use for sponsor billing and inventory management. The trickiest bit would be the actual streaming. The big platforms like YouTube and Netflix make it look easy, but it's quite a technical challenge to distribute high-quality video on low-quality internet all across the globe. And we didn't possibly have the money to build our own streaming tech. Of course, Vimeo originally approached us, but the problem with partnering with them was that they'd have owned the billing relationship. Basically, when someone signed up, Vimeo would keep their credit card details and info, and while we'd get the money, if we ever decided to split with them, there was no guarantee we'd keep the subscribers. So we'd rather.
Wow, that's pretty fucking predatory of Vimeo. Don't show your hand early, best starting tactic. Exactly.
We decided to partner with another streaming provider called Zype. Therefore, all we had to build was a front end, a slick, flashy user interface to make it all look professional, and an iOS app. We barely even had a back end. We had Eric, who doubled as our podcast editor, who would take the videos creators added to a shared Dropbox folder, run them through the encoder, and post them in the right spot with the right metadata. All in all, it cost around $100,000 to get Nebula ready for launch. An incredibly low sum for both a website and app, but there was still one key thing we were missing. You see, creators don't talk unless they're paid to. This is because creators are paid to talk. It's just pragmatic. You basically get one call to action per video. You're lucky to successfully get someone to listen to one call to action, so what the data shows is that if a creator, for example, runs a sponsor read, then promotes their Patreon, what they'll see on average is that they'll earn less overall than if they had just promoted the sponsor, as the Patreon push cuts into performance more than it drives additional revenue. It's not always intuitive, but it's a quirk of audience behavior that we'd understood for years running sponsorships at Standard. Therefore, we knew we couldn't just simply ask creators to promote Nebula out of the goodness of their hearts. Not only.
Yeah, I didn't actually know that regarding ads and sponsorships and stuff, because like I'm gonna be real, I haven't done any. I've done one Yeah, I've done one and I didn't even get paid for it. So it's like, I don't do it. I don't really do it. So I don't know about all this stuff. Good times, good times.
Would this hurt their revenue, which would mean they would stop working with Nebula in the long run? This would hurt Standard's revenue too, since it came from commission on sponsorships. At the time, Standard and Nebula were literally the same company with zero legal separation. So weirdly, free promotion for Nebula would cut off the revenue source that we were using to build Nebula. We didn't immediately have a solution to this. In all honesty, this was the biggest flaw with the business model at launch. But again, the launch was designed to be an experiment, designed to be that minimum viable product. We didn't necessarily need a big marketing method at launch because the launch was designed to help us find that. So the last piece that we needed.
To be fair, one sponsorship is way higher than average. It was a Stream Element sponsorship, so people get a lot of those offers, but you gotta fulfill the requirements in order to get paid, and a lot of the time they don't actually offer low enough requirements to see some kind of payout. Because, like, how many people do you think would honestly play Genshin Impact that haven't already? Or Raid Shadow Legends? Because, like, I get sponsorships for those games, but most people already have an account. So I can't get people to create a new account. It's not going to count if it already has been installed on the phone before. Kind of sucks.
Was for the creators to be emotionally invested. Everyone was excited by the concept, but to assure people would stay excited through the inevitably difficult early days, well, we figured they might as well be financially invested. So, through complex financial and legal wizardry, we developed a system where 50% of Nebula profits were distributed to creators, including, crucially, if the platform were ever to be sold. That means if one day the platform were to sell for, let's say, $1 billion, the creators would get half of that. We split that pool based on watch time, meaning the more creators bring in and engage an audience, the bigger a share they're entitled to. In the short term, this would be a concept that would keep creators building for the future. In the medium term, this would allocate profit to creators based on how much they contributed to growing that profit. And in the long term, if Nebula were ever to sell, this would make that a scenario where everyone wins, rather than one where the platform wins off the hard work of creators. Not only would this directly tie platform success.
That would be pretty fucking based. Like, if they did end up having to sell Nebula, then even if it's going to get taken over and creators don't want to stick with the platform under new ownership, they'd at least get something out of all the effort they've put into it.
Success to creator success and vice versa. It would also keep everyone in that collaborative mindset, one where Nebula and its creators were business partners rather than clients and servicers. We'd win together and we'd lose together. Next, launch. We didn't have some massive plan. The website had been up and running for a bit as we squashed bugs, so what really marked the formal launch, if anything did, was the first public promotion of the platform. That came from Isaac Arthur. On the morning of Thursday, May 23rd, 2019, he released a video called Colonizing Black Holes, which ended with a push to his Nebula original, one of the first 3 called the Paperclip Maximizer. We also had originals at launch from Real Life Lore, Second Thought, and Polyphonic, so each released videos mentioning Nebula funded by a small and finite pool of money dedicated to launch promotion. This first weekend went better than we possibly could have hoped for. By Monday, we had over 4,500 signups. They were trial signups, plenty would cancel, but that gave us plenty enough data to work with to figure out how to make this all work. Better yet, we were getting buzz. A lot of it was negative. Almost everyone thought we'd get added to the long list of failed alternate streaming sites, but at the least, this told us that the idea was exciting enough that people cared to care about us. Over the following weeks and months, we used some of our cash on hand to run some very small additional marketing tests. Basically, seeing if we could pay creators a similar rate to their other sponsors and bring in enough subscribers to justify paying that much. The answers we got were promising. On one test we did on my podcast, Extremities, Nebula paid us $800 and got 200 signups, each of whom would pay $5 a month. The only problem? We didn't have cash. While we'd eventually generate cash with the monthly revenue these subscribers brought in, that'd be a very slow process, meaning it'd be quite a while until we could start sponsoring the larger YouTube channels and developing bigger Nebula originals. But we found a solution. Standard had long-run sponsorships for Curiosity Stream, another streaming service focused on documentary and nonfiction content founded by John Hendricks of the Discovery Channel. To their credit, they didn't get scared thinking creators were trying to replace them, but rather understood that we were appealing to a different, complementary market. So Dave went down to the offices just outside of DC.
So that's why they're always like, or why they're usually mentioned together when they're being shouted out by the bigger bread tubers, by the educational tubers.
And came out the other end with a win-win. We'd bundle. While I can't discuss the exact behind-the-scenes mechanics, we found a way to make it worthwhile for both companies so that when customers signed up for CuriosityStream through each creator's sponsorship links, they'd get access to Nebula for free. Nobody could really see a downside, so we negotiated details, signed a term sheet, and as of September 2019, every Nebula creator just started promoting the bundle in their already booked CuriosityStream spots. In retrospect, it seems like a minor, ultimately easy change, but it yielded massive results. Personally,
Rare Discovery Channel reference, right? I actually forgot they existed until this video had mentioned them. But like I haven't watched cable television in years.
the bundle deal supercharged my sponsorship performance. It was clear that the offering of CuriosityStream and Nebula together was a more convincing sell to our audiences than any other sponsor we ran on the channel. Even better, we started to understand the marketing message that worked. Pushing to behind-the-scenes videos or extended cuts didn't really work. Pushing the idea of no ads or sponsorship on Nebula works okay, but the thing that clearly created these performance multiples was full-length, high-budget, exclusive originals. Seeing that, CuriosityStream started to co-produce Nebula originals with us. In October 2019, to film our highest-budget, most ambitious one to date, I flew all the way to the remote Atlantic island of St. Helena to make the world's most useful airport. While I was there, we crossed 10,000 paying subscribers, then it took less than a month more to hit 20,000. By the end of the year, we had crossed 35,000, and in 6 short months, Nebula had transformed from an idea into a fast-growth startup. Now, through all this history, I was not actually an owner of Standard, just a highly involved long-term client. But it was clearly something I was interested in. I was there from the start, I'd helped it grow.
Interesting. I didn't actually mean to pause.
And I believed in it, and specifically Nebula's, future. In 2020, an opportunity arose. Gray and Philip were less keen on Nebula. It seemed to make less sense to them, while the rest of the creator roster was, so they were looking for a way to end their involvement with the company. Therefore, Brian from Real Engineering, Alex from Low Spec Gamer, Devin from Legal Eagle, Thomas Frank, and myself agreed to purchase their ownership stakes and divide it up amongst ourselves, and we were all extremely bullish on Nebula. By chance, that sale occurred in March 2020, the same month as the world's descent into lockdown. With everyone stuck at home, the streaming industry exploded. It's awkward to talk about in the context of a tragedy, but the honest truth is that our bundle promotion was selling faster than ever, and creators were earning a lot.
It's a little morbid to think about, but like the success of online content services, the success of VTubers as well, benefited from everybody staying inside a lot more. Frankly, I wish I'd started streaming back in 2020 when, you know, the lockdowns were starting up, when I was at home for 6 months at a time. No work. I couldn't leave. I wanted to stream, but I just hadn't started there. You know, the Crash Tyson cameo appearance? Yeah, I noticed that.
CuriosityStream capitalized on industry momentum by listing on NASDAQ through a SPAC merger in October, which was initially a big success. Day one ended with an 11% gain, and they peaked in February 2021 at nearly double their first day price. Through and through, the Nebula bundle was a win-win. It grew Nebula, it grew CuriosityStream, it grew creator sponsor payouts, and it was a worthwhile proposition for all. So we decided to double down on aligning the success of the two companies by, for the first time ever, accepting investment. Now, investment had long been something we were wary of. In our view, a big reason why similar business models had failed in the past was because investors pressured the streaming platforms to squeeze more and more value out of creators.
Yeah, like I would definitely be wary of investors as well, because that's the bottom line of what most people do when they invest in a company, in a startup. They want to see the maximum possible return of their investment, so they're going to kind of pressure you to add things, like how Activision adds a lot of stuff to games, even though they really don't need it, and it's just kind of bleeding their users dry.
Basically, they did the thing that seemed right when you looked at it on a slide deck. Take a bigger share of the revenue, make more money. But that fails to understand that the creators drive almost all of the value of a platform like Nebula. If they're making good money, they'll make more exclusive content for audiences, they'll bring their creator friends in, they'll keep promoting the platform. So it's really that if you take a smaller slice of the pie and give more to creators, the pie will grow so much in the long term that the platform will make more overall. Every dollar a streaming platform like Nebula makes is
interesting. So if corporations, so it's almost like when people are properly compensated for the effort they put out, it shows through not only their work but through other outsiders seeing their work and then becoming invested in it, seeing the quality of that. Like, how is this so hard for some people? Smosh was milk dry by Defy back in the day. I can see every reason to be wary. Oh yeah, excuse me, I totally get it.
Is through the creators, so it's about creating that win-win scenario rather than trying to extract value from your business partners. We weren't confident that most investors, especially institutional investors, would understand that and the other nuanced dynamics of the creator industry in the long run, with one exception: CuriosityStream. Their people seem to get it. They were also by far our biggest marketing partner, biggest production partner. We'd already aligned ourselves with them so deeply that investment seemed like a minor additional level that would yield a lot of cash to reinvest in growing Nebula. So after a unanimous vote by myself and the other owners, Nebula no longer was entirely ours. While the exact numbers are not public, what is that they bought a significant minority stake that valued Nebula, the company that did not exist just 3 years prior, at over $50 million.
Jesus, just for a small stake? In order to combine CuriosityStream and Nebula? Wow.
Incredible. Driven by this funding, 2022 was comprised of some of our fastest growth to date, especially as shows like Real Life Lore's Modern Conflicts and our Jetlag the Game proved massively successful at driving huge numbers of subscriptions. Staff headcount ballooned, especially in the engineering department, as they staffed up to build apps for new platforms like Roku and Samsung TV. We also finally had the money to build our own streaming tech, which freed us from some of the technical limitations of Zype's white label offering. And we geared up to produce our most ambitious slate of originals to date with the co-production funding CuriosityStream would provide. But this is a good chance to acknowledge failure. Now, failure is inevitable in business. It's truly part of the process. You try new things carefully, and success is defined by your batting average. If you win more than you lose, you're winning. Nebula Classes, however, probably pulled down that batting average. It sounded like a great idea at the time. Through COVID, creators were earning massively by making online classes. We were constantly approached by various class platforms who wanted to sponsor our creators, and so rather than promoting their services, we thought it better to build it into Nebula so we could promote our own service and keep all the customer revenue in the ecosystem. In all honesty, we were trying to capitalize on a wave of popularity that was relatively aligned to what we were already doing. Unlike when we launched Nebula as a whole, we had a good amount of cash on hand to invest in this thanks to CuriosityStream's investment, so we wanted to launch strong. We built out a section of the website and apps for it, we built the back-end tech to allow for multiple tiers of membership, and we invested a lot in content. We launched with 6 classes, and each was high quality, shot in a studio in New York, well edited with motion graphics and everything. That's to say, they weren't cheap. We then planned to release a new one each week, which meant organizing a dense production schedule. It was a massively complex, large-scale undertaking, but the engineering and production staff made it all happen without a hitch. The problem was that the concept just wasn't resonating with customers.
Unfortunately, that's so true. Like, as interesting as it is to learn new things, not everybody wants to. It's not going to appeal to everybody. Nebula Classes were kind of the main reason why I felt it was more nerdy. I mean, I get that. It's about educating yourself through content, which does kind of come off that way. A lot of people just, they want to engage in some kind of escapism with the content they engage with. They just want to turn their brain off, laugh at anime girls on the internet kind of thing. Some people do want to spend their time learning new things, but it's unfortunately not the biggest piece of the pie available to the people who consume content.
We initially sold Nebula classes as an additional tier above normal Nebula. It was $100 a year by itself, or a $5 a month upcharge for existing subscribers, which might seem like a lot.
Wait, $100 a year? Or $5 a month? That yearly thing sounds like a ripoff. But that might have been poorly explained.
It was actually lower than competitors with similar production quality. We ran sponsorships on this and had some minor wins, but on average there was clearly audience confusion as we also ran bundle sponsorships on the same channels at different times. We couldn't promote classes in bundle sponsorships as classes weren't part of the bundle, so in a way we were competing against ourselves and losing. Some people were upgrading. It wasn't some massive failure, but hardly enough to justify our rate of production. Ultimately, creators could improve sponsorship performance more by making Nebula originals, so that's what they would do. It was also clear that by the time we launched, we were on the downslope of the online classes wave. We were far from the only class platform struggling to find product market fit. So ultimately, we decided it best to just have one Nebula. No upcharge for classes, we'd make it available to all subscribers and simply slow down our production calendar. It was an important experiment, and while not a direct, overwhelming success, in a way, the marketing test we did for it proved crucial for what was to come, our biggest, most existential experiment to date. Come late 2022, as indicated in their quarterly reports, CuriosityStream was looking to pull back their growth rate and orient more towards profitability. COVID was dying down, screen time was lowering, the streaming industry overall was weakening, and so it made every sense in the world for them to switch from a growth orientation to a profit orientation, as all growth-oriented companies that survive eventually do. I assume for these reasons we got word that they wanted to significantly pull back on marketing spend through Nebula bundle sponsorships. Clearly, this wasn't something we wanted. Not only would it slow Nebula's growth rate, but more crucially, it would reduce how much we could pay creators to talk about Nebula on YouTube. This was still the primary way creators were earning through Nebula. While watch time payouts and originals were significant, payouts for YouTube sponsorships about Nebula were far more so. So the natural next question to ask was, could we just do sponsorships ourselves? You'll notice that nearly everything advertised in a sponsorship at the end of a YouTube video is an online subscription-based service. For some reason or another, these are just what works best, and here's how those advertising campaigns work in the background. Let's say a service costs $10 a month. Every service has data on how long the average subscriber sticks around. Let's say it's 27 months. That means the average lifetime value of a sign-up is $270. It might actually cost, say, $5 a month to run that service, meaning per month there's $5 left. A good bit of that has to go to actually getting the customers in the first place, to marketing. Knowing there's $135 left in the average lifetime value, the company will decide on a target average cost per acquisition. Let's say it's $75, leaving $60 in lifetime value for profit that can be reinvested in platform growth or just taken as profit. Now that $75 target cost per acquisition acts as the central success metric.
Yeah, I'm gonna be real. I'm getting a little lost on this map. I'm not the brightest person.
For marketing, and when an agency designs a campaign with creators pushing the service, their payment will be designed in the background by this number. If, on average, they drive 100 signups per video, their pay will be roughly $7,500 per video, and either the agency or the service itself will evaluate spots as they run to make sure the long-term average cost ends up at or below $75. This works quite well. The only issue is when that $75 needs to get paid. Here, right when the customer signs up. But on the company side, after the $5 in monthly operating expenses, it's going to take 15 months for them to capture that $75 back in revenue. You essentially need to spend $75 to eventually earn that $60 in profit. Put another way, you need to invest it. This is the role of investors in these startups. Companies can have an entirely viable business model, but just need more cash in the bank to pay for the marketing that leads to growth. But we didn't want to take more investment. We didn't want to give up more ownership of the company. So the question was, could we use the couple million we had in the bank to kickstart growth at a fast enough rate? We were sure we had a viable business model. We had years of proof that we could get a customer through YouTube sponsorship for less than their average lifetime value. The question was when that cost per acquisition was recaptured. If it was quick, in the first year or so, we were in business. The math worked out that we could maintain or even grow our monthly marketing spend as we would recapture revenue fast enough to reinvest it in new marketing. If it was slower, if we didn't recapture target cost per acquisition until far in the future, the careful balance that had made Nebula work where so many close equivalents failed could all come crumbling down. Today, we're 5 months on from the switch to direct marketing, and I won't bury the lead, it went off better than our wildest expectations. Crucially,
Howdy, Demon
over
Fox.
80% of signups are opting to pay for the annual subscription rather than the monthly one. Considering we pay creators for Nebula sponsorships the day after they go out, that means we actually get a year's worth of revenue before we even pay for the promotion. In this case, that entirely eliminated the cash flow constraint because we make more day one on an average signup than our average cost to acquire a new customer. Of course, that doesn't mean we turn a day one profit. We have operating costs beyond marketing, but it means we have a marketing strategy that could theoretically expand basically infinitely. Zero cash flow limitations. In just a few short months, we went from spending $0 to more than $500,000 on marketing per month, and we are earning back more than that in the same month. I can't stress enough how incredible this is. We, the creators, are now entirely in control of our own future. With this,
God damn, they got a lot of money thrown around with that. They've... Oh, shit. They've clearly put a lot of effort into their platform, and hey, at least it's working out for them.
We're charting our most ambitious slate of originals to date. We're bringing in new creators. We're investing in our tech. There is so much that this big risk has unlocked. Right now, it feels like the last couple of years have been an overwhelming success, but I truly believe that, looking back, we'll consider 2023 much like we see 2019. The turning point that makes previous success the backstory you just have to get through to get to the good part. We have learned so much. So now we understand what people want, and we have a company configured to offer that. I truly cannot wait to show you what we can do. Now I need to do thank yous. When describing Nebula's history like this, it feels like its success was defined by decisions. And while partially true, those decisions could only lead to anything thanks to the sum of small collective actions made by dozens, hundreds, thousands of people. First and foremost, the staff of Nebula and Standard. Unlike us creators, they do not get the public recognition for what they do. They pour their passion into servicing our passion, working day in and day out to build a system that allows us to do more of what we love to do.
Truth. You gotta respect the back-end workers. They put in so much effort and they help out so much. You get less of them with indie VTubers, but like, I mean, there are people in the background that even help out my channel. And while they do prefer to remain anonymous, I definitely thank them for their contributions towards the channel.
Nebula truly could not exist without them. Us creators could not exist without them. So I'm endlessly grateful for the work they do. Second, the creators. The community that has arisen out of Nebula and Standard is just incredible. Every day we talk, celebrating our wins, commiserating our failures, searching for solutions to problems. We go to conferences together, we go on vacation together, we go to each other's weddings, and we'll be at each other's funerals. I truly don't know if I could have navigated the stresses of life as a creator without them, and I know Nebula would have failed without our collective vision for a brighter future for the creator economy. Lastly, the subscribers. I could never have imagined that people would look at Nebula as anything more than a company, something trying to separate them from their dollars. But I was wrong. There is an unbelievable community of people who not only use Nebula, but have latched onto the same vision we have. They celebrate our wins and help show us where we can go stronger. I'm constantly in awe of how much forgiveness they gave us for scrappiness on our bootstrapped early days, and we could not have come to today without that. Thank you for taking a risk on us. I hope we proved it worthwhile, and I promise that we'll only work harder to make that even more so in the future. To close out, I had to pay for the production costs on this video somehow, and it kind of felt weird to make it feel even more like a big long Nebula ad by putting a Nebula sponsorship at the end, but it felt even more weird to put another sponsor at the end, so I'm gonna go with the less weird option, but keep it simple. If you aren't subscribed to Nebula but want to check it out, use our link, nebula.tv/Wendover. You'll get $20 off an annual subscription, bringing the cost down to just $2.50 a month. Thank you for caring enough to listen to this story. It's a wild one, and I hope in a few years we have an even better one to tell you, thanks to you.
I did not, expect all that. That is the kind of thing I'd like to see out of other platforms and whatnot. Like, with all this worry over controversy on like Kick and stuff, Nebula is just kind of not really talked about, at least in these spheres that I'm in. I've heard the bigger creators talk about it on their channels and stuff, but not like none of the smaller creators. And I don't know how much market there is for VTubers on there. I know we are a pretty niche market, so to speak. There's more interest in non-VTuber creators than there is for VTubers. But hey, I'm gonna keep on trucking. Keep doing what I do. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.